Against major events, he is as helpless as against the elements. So far from endeavoring to influence the future, he simply lies down and lets things happen to him. And sadly, this quote from George Orwell, to me at least, seems all too true of many of the men that I see in the church around me. Men that have become nice rather than good. And as a result, I feel like we've lost view of what it really means to be a man in the church. Instead, we have men who are agreeable, weak, shy, and afraid to step up as leaders that they're called to be. So today I want to look at a few reasons in the church and society as to what I feel went wrong with our view of men and how we need to turn and look at Jesus to show us what it means to be a man. And the first issue that I see is that largely in society and in the church also, men have become over-domesticated and in some cases even feminized. In the classroom, boys are punished for being boys. Instead, we need to sit in rows, do neat work, and sit up straight. And if you know anything about little boys, they don't want to do anything but just run around outside and just get messy and play around in the mud. And in the church, we're taught to be nice. And in his book, No More Christian Nice Guy, Paul Kirkland says that nice can confront the world's source of pain the way Jesus did and commanded us to do as well. Niceness makes people agreeable, not good. Somehow we have mistaken niceness for righteousness. And even Mark Driscoll talks about this, and he notes that the church has produced a bunch of nice, soft, tender, chickified church boys. 60% of Christians are chicks, and the 40% that are dudes are still sort of chicks. And going along with that, I've seen a few studies that the numbers vary slightly, but that roughly 3 million men are missing from the church because they feel that it's too feminized. They don't feel like they fit in. And it's this over-domestication that leads me to the second thing that I see as a problem, and that's shame. Men are often met with shame for embracing their masculinity and showing that in their lives. And this shame often produces one of two effects. These men either become these nice little weak, shy guys who are afraid of conflict, they just want to appease everybody and be on everyone's good side, or they'll revolt against it and they'll become angry with those who bring the shame on them and let that anger at the shame ruin their lives. And both of these are a perversion of what we're made to be, and there are only a couple of the many reasons that I found that have led to men becoming nice instead of good, strong, biblical men that they should be, but I believe that they're two of the biggest causes. And in the church, these problems are even worse because I feel like we're given an incomplete picture of Jesus. So when I've been asked before by a friend of mine, he challenged me with this. He asked me to picture the archetypal male, and for me, sadly, that image was not Jesus. He's not the first person that comes to mind when I think of a manly man. In fact, he might be one of the farthest people from my mind. And going back to Paul Kirkland, he's noted on this also, and says that even the single most famous portrait of Jesus makes him look more like a pouty model for Breck shampoo than a man. And instead, I feel like we need to see the side of Jesus that might be considered unpleasant in today's church. The side of Jesus that led him to call the religious rulers of the day hypocrites, whitewashed tombs, fools, and a brood of vipers fit for hell. How is it that we can follow a Jesus that acted out against authority in such a way, yet shame men when they try to take a similar stand? And we need to be teaching men how Jesus was able to balance not only his gentleness, which we've been able to teach, but also his fierceness. Both qualities that are essential to being man and can be seen throughout the Bible, and not only Jesus' life, but even Paul and David's. With Paul, we see a man who affectionately looks after his spiritual son Timothy, yet harshly rebukes the church in Corinth. And with David, we have a warrior poet who tenderly provides for Jonathan's descendants. And in 2 Samuel 17:8, he's described as being as fierce as a wild bear robbed of her cubs. Now going back to Jesus, I'd like to focus first on his fiercer side that might very well be discouraged today. Because Jesus was, in every sense of the term, a troublemaker. He stood up to authority, confronted those around him, used sarcasm, avoided questions, grew impatient, and even complained to his disciples. And if you want an example of fierce Jesus, you just have to look at Matthew 21:12 when he goes into the temple. He walks in, sees what's going on, he drives everyone out of the temple and even goes so far as to overturn the tables of the money changers. It's definitely not behavior that would be acceptable in today's church. However, in order to balance this fierceness properly and not to go overboard with it, we need to remember his commands to the disciples in Matthew 10:16, where he tells them to be as shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves. To be wise with how they use their fierceness. And unfortunately, more focus is always put on being innocent than being shrewd. We're always told to be innocent and to be nice to people and to try not to offend people. And this only further causes men to be nice. They always seek to lay low, and it robs them of living a purposeful life. In order to live a purposeful life, you need to have conflict. It's unavoidable. And it is this that gives many men a spirit of timidity. The same spirit of timidity that Paul warns about in 2 Timothy 1:7, when he says, "For God did not give us a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power, of love, and of self-discipline." And it's the good men, not the nice, that are able to stand up against the injustices in this world with this spirit of power. And now on the gentler side of Christ. Gentler side of every man that many, including myself, at one point, might feel ashamed to show. To do this, I like to look at the death of Lazarus in John 11. And in verse 35, we're told just simply, Jesus wept. Out in the open, surrounded by witnesses, Jesus just broke down and openly wept over the death of Lazarus. And growing up, I was always under the assumption that crying or showing any similar emotions in public was just not something you were to do. Now, I was never told this, but from what I had seen in authority figures in my life, it's the conclusion that I came to. And this only led me to bottle up my emotions inside as I grew up, and it caused me to also pull away from those around me, because I wasn't able to fully open up myself to them. I was holding back. I simply existed with no purpose in my life and just went through the motions, with occasional bursts of anger on people who didn't deserve it when those emotions got too far. Even going through youth group, when I started attending my sophomore year of high school, I was unable to fully share my desires and struggles with my friends and my small group because of these emotions. I felt like they were a weakness, and that because of that, I couldn't fully share with them who I was, and I wasn't able to step up and take opportunities to be a leader in my small group and in my youth group when the opportunity presented itself. Since then, though, I've met many men, and I've even seen men around me change in a way that has shown me how to be open with my emotions. I've even seen my father recently, at times, just break down and allow his sadness to show through in front of his children. And this was something that I never thought I'd see. My own father crying. And I can't even begin to tell you how eye-opening that is. See the man that you look up to, who shows you how to stand tall and be firm as a man, finally show you what it's like to embrace that gentler, tender side of yourself, and to show you that it's okay to show your emotions and to be open with people and to cry in front of them. And that really opened up doors for me. It showed me that I can go out there and I can let people know when I'm not doing well, and let them know what's going on in my life. Once men have come to embrace this, though, their fierceness and gentleness, and to do so in a wise and tactful way, as Jesus did, we need to encourage them and remind them to be the leaders that God's called them to be. Not leaders that rely on their own power, who might become tyrants, but rather leaders who lovingly rebuke and teach the word of God to those around them, calling them to follow it. And after that, we need to show them to be bold. Bold in all aspects of life, whether it's in saying up for the truth, in their families, or in the workplace. Christian men need to be able to say no and need to stop allowing people to walk over them because they know that they're Christians.